Honorable House now resume its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mr. Whittle, Mr. Smith, Mr. Holness, Mr. Shaw, Dr. Chang, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Montague, Ms. Grange, Mr. Henry, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Mackenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Darrell Vaz, Mrs. Robinson, Mr. Hutchinson, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Tufton, Mrs. Malahoo Fort, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Spencer, Mrs. Williams, Mr. Green, Mr. Arscott, Mr. Azan, Dr. Bloomfield, Mr. Brown, Mr. Buchanan, Mr. Buchanan, Dr. Campbell, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Clark, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Ms. Daly, Mrs. Robinson, Mr. Daly, Mrs. Dalrymple Philibert, Dr. Davies, Mr. Fagan, Dr. Ferguson, Dr. Green, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Hales, Mrs. Holness, Mr. Brown, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Kellier, Mr. Main, Dr. McNeil, Mrs. Neto, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Michael Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Pickersgill, Mr. Redmond, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Robinson, Mrs. Simpson Miller, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Terry Long, Reverend Thwaites, Mr. Dwayne Vaz, Mr. Wright, Mr. Robertson, okay. Mr. Arscott,
Members, as we convene for the first time in 2017, let me take the opportunity to wish for all of you and your families good health and happiness throughout this new year. I hope as well that we made good use of our holidays and that we have returned to tackle urgent business of the people who have sent us here with renewed vigor and determination to do all that is in our power to improve the quality of life and to create opportunities for them to pursue and to achieve legitimate dreams and aspirations. I expect that the House will be very active this year. I appeal to members on both sides to be diligent and attentive in discharging the various responsibilities that they have so far, and to ensure that the business of the House proceed efficiently and at special importance and on a timely basis. This includes the work of several committees, for which so much, and for formal sittings of this House, and I repeat, formal sittings our performance last year must be improved on this year. I also implore members to commit themselves to the highest standard of decorum and civility as we carry on the business of the people. This is not our chamber. This is the people's chamber. With technology that is now in use, they are watching us, watching to see how serious and committed we are in doing their business, and of course doing the business of the country. Discussions and debates will at times be robust, even strident, and I expect it and need it. This is one of the characteristics of our parliamentary democracy. It might even be said that it is part of Jamaica's culture. But there are limits, members. There are limits. There are lines that should not be crossed. You have placed me here, and you expect me to see that the House runs properly. We can be forceful and effective in our utterances without being abusive or bombastic. The chair will at all times seek to be fair, but it is also obliged and determined to be firm. You expect no less from me. I appeal to you to give support to all of that so that we can carry it through. Much of the success that I hope we'll have depends on the collaboration between the leaders of the House, the leader of opposition business and the leader of government business. They are both distinguished and experienced parliamentarians capable of providing quality leadership that can make this House an exemplary part of our democratic system. I myself will be in constant dialogue with them to assist in making that a reality. Members, I ask you to let us determine that those who have sent us here will be proud of us while we do the business of the country. Statements by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, I listened keenly to your opening comments for this year. I would like, as leader of the House, to associate myself with the comments that you have made, but I can't help noticing that this is our very first session for this year. We have started half an hour behind scheduled time. In wishing you, sir, members of staff, and members on both sides of the House a happy and prosperous new year. With the prosperity we'll have, it incorporates health, wealth, and happiness. Mr. Speaker, as you indicated, this is intended to be an active year in Parliament. We hope to answer questions a lot more prompt. We hope to deal with private member motions in the shortest possible time. All in all, Mr. Speaker, it is the intention of the government to have a very vibrant Parliament during this 2017 calendar year. We hope that there are no challenges and difficulties and situations that can't be dealt with even outside of Parliament. So we greatly minimize any possibility of any situations that really, on reflection, ought not to be, is definitely not warranted. So with those brief words, few words, Mr. The Leader of the Opposition, Billy smiles. I think he understands exactly what I mean. With those few words, I say once again, Happy New Year.
Mr. Powley.
Mr. Speaker, I join with you and the Leader of Government Business in wishing all our members a Happy New Year, to the staff of our Parliament, a Happy New Year, and we do anticipate, as the Leader of Government Business has announced, a robust year. Mr. Speaker, as you have urged, we have taken your comments very seriously, and we will be working to ensure that there is decorum appropriate to this House, and to ensure that we can get through the business as expeditiously as possible. One of the vehicles, I think, that the Parliament and both the Leader of Government Business and myself will have to utilize more is our ability to converse and to get things done outside of when we are sitting and arguing at each other. And I think we have to find this mechanism to resolve and to thrash out some of these thorny issues before we get inside here. And I want to commend that approach to the Leader of Government Business as we embark now on this, we are told, robust parliamentary year. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Blessings to all our members.
Announcements.
Are the following. Minister Paper Number 1, an annual report and audited financial statements of the Jamaica Dairy Development Board for the year ended March 31, 2012. Minister Paper Number 2, Cabinet Agenda Issues for November 7, 2016. Minister Paper Number 3, Lobster Fishery Regime for the Management and Sustainable Use of the Caribbean Spiny Lobster, Panulirus argus, in Jamaica. Report of the Auditor General on the financial transactions and financial statements of the Government of Jamaica for 2016. Auditor General's Department, Performance Audit of Jamaica Mortgage Bank, Management of Construction Loan Portfolio. Annual Report for the Postal Corporation of Jamaica for the financial year 2015-2016. Annual Report and audited financial statements of the National Library of Jamaica for the financial year 2013-2014. Annual Report and audited financial statements of the Sports Development Foundation for the year 2013. Annual Report and audited financial statements of the Port Authority of Jamaica for the financial year 2015-2016. Annual Report and audited financial statements of the Jamaica Anti-Doping Commission, JADCO, for the years 2008 to 2011. Annual Reports and audited financial statements of the Bureau of Standards of Jamaica for the year ending March 2016. The Civil Service Establishment General Order 2016 under the Civil Service Establishment Act. Auditor General's Departments, Certified Appropriation Accounts, Head 6700A, 2013-2014, 6700B, 2013-2014, Head 700, 2014-2015, and B, 2014-2015, and A, 2800A, 2014-15. 1500, 2014-15, and 1500B, 2014-2015. The first supplementary estimates for 2016-2017.
Bills brought from the Senate.
The following is a message from the President of the Senate. To the Honorable House of Representatives, I have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 16th day of December 2016, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act and a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Jamaica Racing Commission Act were passed in the Senate without amendment. Signed, Thomas Tavares Finson, CDQC-JP, President of the Senate.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. Mr. Twit.
May it please you, Mr. Speaker. After the appropriate elapse of time, I beg to move the following motion. Whereas the government is aware of the cruel effects of smoking tobacco and of marijuana use, and whereas the government has obligated the nation to the terms of the International Convention on Tobacco Control, and whereas domestic law has been altered regarding marijuana use without any effective public education program regarding the health and social consequences of such use, particularly among school-aged children and young people in general, and whereas tobacco use is still being portrayed as a socially acceptable habit without sufficient information and advocacy regarding the lethal effects of such use, be it resolved that this Honourable House address the grievous public health issues arising from tobacco and ganja use and resolve ways in which these dangers to life and productivity must now be addressed. May it please you.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House I will move the following motion. Be it resolved that the first supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31, 2017, which was laid on the table of the House on the 10th day of January 2017, be referred to the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. Mr. Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I'll move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion. And Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move the following motion. The Civil Service Establishment Act, General Order 2016 Resolution. Whereas Section 3, Subsection 1 of the Civil Service Establishment Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Minister may, by order, constitute or abolish offices in the public service. And whereas on the 8th day of December 2016, the Minister made the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2016, and whereas it is provided by Section 3, Subsection 4 of the Act, that an order made under this section shall be subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2016 Resolution. 2. The Civil Service Establishment General Order 2016, which was laid on the table of the House on the 10th day of January 2017, is hereby affirmed. Mr. Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Questions and answers to questions.
Mr. Speaker, there are 4 outstanding questions on the question paper. We intend this afternoon to answer question 9. The Minister of Health will answer question 9. In relation to question 10, the Minister of Local Government and Community Development is at this time out of the country, and that question will be answered the next sitting of the House. Mr. Speaker, question number 11 of the Most Honorable Prime Minister, that question will also be answered next week. The Prime Minister left a minute ago for the airport on his way to Israel on official business. Question number 12 to the Minister of Industrial Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries will be answered this afternoon when we have dealt with question number 9. So we now ask Mr. Speaker, the members either not hearing well or not listening, but the question for the Prime Minister, that will be answered next week. The reason being, he's now on his way to the airport.
Mr. Tufton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oh, yes, right. Well, he called on me.
Mr. Daly, you are to request your answers that you have been seeking.
So I failed to answer the questions standing in my name from last year, September.
I gave it to the orderly from earlier.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, just to say that the answers were delayed because the member was ill and he requested a delay, and I obliged. Mr. Speaker, how many babies, Mr. Speaker, first question, how many babies have died at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital from sepsis since May 2016? Answer, there were 5 neonatal deaths at Victoria Jubilee Hospital from sepsis, which were culture positive for the period May to the 20th of October 2016. 11 neonatal deaths were presumed sepsis over the same period based on clinical presentation. Question 2, how many babies have died at the University of the West Indies and Cornwall Regional Hospital from sepsis since May 2016? Answer to UHWI, May to the 10th of October 2016, 2 deaths from sepsis. Cornwall Regional Hospital, May to September 2016, 4 deaths from sepsis. Question 3, how many babies have died from sepsis across the nation's hospitals since May 2016? And there's a table here, Mr. Speaker. Victoria Jubilee Hospital, 10, that's May to September. University Hospital of the West Indies, 2, Bustamante Hospital for the West Indies, 3, Spanish Town, 3, Cornwall Regional, 4, Princess Margaret, St. Anne's Bay, 0, Anata Bay, 1, Port Maria, Port Antonio, 0, Sablamar, 2, Falmouth General, 0, Noel Holmes, 0, Mandeville Regional, 5, Black River Hospital, 0, Maypen Hospital, 2, total of 29 during the period. Question 4, whether or not there are autopsy reports for all the neonates that have died at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital since May 2016. No autopsies are requested where there is a suspicion for other reasons for death which are not clinically apparent. Generally, where there is a clear diagnosis, none is requested. Question 5, which percentage of babies delivered what percentage of the babies delivered at Victoria Jubilee Hospital has been admitted to the special care nursery since May 2016? May to September 2016, 34.7% of babies were admitted to the special care nursery. There are multiple causes for the admissions of neonates to the nursery. Question 6, what investigations have been done to find the cause of the number of babies admitted to the nursery at Victoria Jubilee Hospital, and what corrective measures have been put in place? Answer, admissions occurring at Victoria Jubilee Hospital for this 2016 period, May to September, are within what is usually observed, and there's a table to support that, 2011 to 2015. The majority of babies referred to the nursery are for transient respiratory dysfunction, which for most resolves within 24 hours. Investigations are related to the presentation of the baby and the mother. For example, sepsis screen, full or partial, would be required where sepsis is suspected or cannot be ruled out, and include blood culture, urine culture, cerebrospinal fluid culture, complete blood count. Sepsis screen would not be routinely done in the following example. Baby with jaundice and has evidence of blood group incompatibility would have testing and monitoring. Baby of mother with diabetes mellitus would have glucose testing and monitoring. This number is in keeping with what is usually observed at the Victoria Jubilee. And the table 2, Mr. Speaker, outlines the 5 years from 2011 to 2015, which gives a monthly breakdown of the proportion of babies delivered at Victoria Jubilee which were admitted to the special care unit or special care nursery. And then it gives a mean, and it gives the epidemic threshold, and it clearly indicates that there were no sort of epidemic proportion. For example, without going through the entire table, in May 2011 it was 40%, 2012 65, that's unusually high, 2013 39.8, 2014 48.2, 2015 35.2, the mean 45.7, the epidemic threshold is 69.7, so well within that margin. The strategies for corrective measures, there is a monthly review of the nursery admissions to identify clinical management concerns and to implement strategies to discuss any concern. There is a neonatal resuscitation training program for labor ward staff. In this program, the labor ward staff is trained continuously, given that respiratory dysfunction is the main reason for nursery admission. One resuscitator has been procured. There are plans to procure more, and infant warmers for the labor ward. So these are some of the measures. A full-time consultant obstetrician and dedicated team of doctors for the patients in labor is required in order to improve management. Question 7. How many stillbirths have been recorded at Victoria Jubilee since May 2016? A total of 62 stillbirths were recorded between May and September. And again, Mr. Speaker, this is outlined in a table of stillbirths showing from May to September, years 2010 to 2015, and then May to September combined. And the mean, the epidemic threshold, and what it clearly shows is that there was no sort of epidemic proportion. In other words, it fell within the normal range. Question 8, what measures have been put in place to investigate the causes and to remedy the number of stillbirths at Victoria Jubilee Hospital? Answer, a comparative analysis of 6 years of stillbirths at Victoria Jubilee reveals no increase in number from May to September 2016. So the conclusion is based on the data that there is no abnormally high levels of stillbirths. Most of the stillbirths that have been recorded at Victoria Jubilee Hospital are from patients arriving at the hospital with a dead infant in the utero. Strategies to improve pregnancy outcomes includes continuous health education during the antenatal period, the referral of high-risk patients to the hospital as detailed in the Ministry of Health's protocol has reduced the stillbirths, continuous vigilance by the midwives caring for low-risk patients. The process of induction of labor and elective cesarean section has been streamlined to minimize details in getting these procedures, to increase the number of ultrasound machines available to ascertain fetal well-being for all patients that are admitted. And finally, the Southeast Regional Health Authority conducted a stillbirth audit in 2016. Field work has been completed and data cleaning and analysis will be completed by December 2016. I'm not yet seen that report. The audit will direct further strategies to be employed to decrease the avoidable stillbirths at all levels of the health system, as well as by the mothers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Dalit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for responding to the questions. It has taken so long. And for the records, may I just indicate that the last day of for sitting of the House in 2016 was when the questions were to be answered. Unfortunately, I was not in the House. I was in the country, and I did not attend that day. So the Minister and I communicated, and I indicated to him that it would be best if he take it in the new year. But it was still late, because these questions are to be answered in 21 days, as you are aware, Mr. Speaker. Anyhow, thank you for answering the question. The reason why these questions were tabled in the first instance was the fact that there were two conflicting reports coming from the government on the number of babies, or should I call them angels, who had died at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital. The regional director or the regional chair had indicated that 40 babies had died to that number. And it was reported in the newspaper prominently that a larger number of persons, babies, had died at the hospital. But the Ministry of Health at the time had a press conference and said only 5 babies had died at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital. And in answer to question 1, the Minister is confirming that there were 5 neonatal deaths at VGH from sepsis, and 11 neonatal deaths were presumed to be from this sepsis, but no post-mortem or autopsy was done. And this is where I would like to say, now, Mr. Thing, if this is in the public domain, this is an issue that the country was alarmed over, since we have been through this before. And so much time has elapsed. I would have thought, since there was a long period of delay to get the answers, and I understand it, to put all of these technical things together takes some time. But I would have believed that during that period, the 5 that you confirmed from sepsis, and the other 11 you confirmed from clinical presentation, that is 11 and 5, 16, that you would have been able to do your post-mortem on the 16 angels to say for sure that they died from this disease. It has taken us a long time. What is also very alarming and of concern to the opposition is that even from the time when these questions were tabled, we still do not have any numbers for Spanish Town Hospital, which we know that there were several deaths at Spanish Town Hospital caused by the same disease. And to date, in 2017, first sitting of the House, we still do not have any available number of death of babies from the Spanish Town Hospital. Events have overtaken us, I can say, and I'm the first to always say that it's a very tough and difficult ministry and complicated to run. But if something is in the public domain as serious as the death of babies, and other former ministers know that, the antenna goes up, the technical teams are brought in, and the investigations are done immediately to establish the cause of death. And I'm sorry that we have not been able to do the post-mortem on all of these. What is also very alarming to me, and well, not alarm, but concern to me, is that, go back to sleep. Go back to sleep. Yeah. Is that the nursery. There are protocols relating to the admission in these nurseries. There are protocols established for people who attend these nurseries. And just recently there was some incident at the nursery at the University Hospital where somebody just walked in and took away a baby. And I'm saying, are these protocols still being observed? Are they still being observed? And I would like you to tell us also when will you have the available numbers for Spanish Town Hospital?
Thank you very much, Member, and thank you for your understanding, given that you have traveled this road and know that sometimes the data is a little challenging. Let me just say, Mr. Speaker, and to my colleagues here, that there was a fair bit of confusion with the numbers as they were reported, which created, I think, well, I'm sure, unnecessary panic around the situation at Victoria Jubilee. Indeed, when the investigation was done and the facts were presented, as I have done here, it was discovered that nowhere near the 40 that was reported, or the 26 that was a Sunday Gleaner headline. And in fact, we actually provided the evidence to that particular newspaper. And they ran a story which was supposed to have been a correction, which didn't turn out to be very apparent to the general populace. But the fact is, it was an erroneous story. So the confusion exists, and as a consequence, I accept why the opposition and others would be naturally concerned. I have just checked while you were asking, Mr. Colleague, through you, Mr. Speaker, that the 11 suspected were subsequently tested and came back negative. The 11. I said 5 were confirmed and 11 suspected. I am told by the technical person that the tests were in fact subsequently done. But the responses are a little dated because, and it should have been updated, so I'm correcting that. So yes, the tests were in fact done.
Spanish Town?
Spanish Town, I'm not sure why it's not here, but I'll check on that and I'll give you the response. But if we were to go by the trends of all the hospitals that we have reported, there is not any sort of unusual occurrence in terms of neonatal deaths, and particularly from this particular condition. Bear in mind now that we gave a 5-month span for these deaths that were reported. So if you did the average, it wouldn't show any unusually high occurrence. Having said that, we still need to be careful. We still need to be on alert and ensure that we practice, give the best possible practices. I have Spanish Town. Spanish Town is 3 deaths. I am told by the technical persons here. Okay? The issue of protocol and access to nurseries and so on, and you're referencing the particular issue at the University Hospital of the West Indies. Very unfortunate incident. Those protocols do exist, and since that particular incident, a review has been done in all the hospitals to ensure that we strengthen those protocols in the interest of protecting those babies.
Just another follow-up question. Do you still stand by the report from the Ministry of Health that it was the mothers who transmitted the sepsis to their unborn babies?
The technical report suggests or confirms, based on tests that were done, that the condition, in order to be extra sensitive, because I don't want to be misconstrued, misinterpreted, or appear insensitive to the mothers or the child, that this particular condition, and I'm not a medical doctor, is possible, and in this case highly likely, and in fact it has been confirmed that it was from a mother to child transmission. It was not a case of the environment being contaminated, which is also possible, where you can actually pick up that particular ailment from a contaminated environment. What the technical experts have said, and I have to go by their word and their report, is that they did their necessary checks when they discovered that there was an issue, and as far as they are concerned, and they concluded, the environment was sufficiently sanitized not to have created the transmission. And I'm reporting it as I got it from them.
Questions by the opposition, Honourable Minister, were specific to sepsis, and therefore your answers were specific to the outbreak of sepsis at these institutions. Can you say if there were other deaths of neonatals as a result of any other cause?
I'm sure there would have been other deaths, and in fact the question actually expands to look at stillbirths and so on, so it does capture other deaths. What is, and I can provide that information. You have accepted that that data doesn't flow off the top of the head immediately. So if you require it, then I'll respond to that with time. What is important to note, however, through you, Mr. Speaker, is that the rate of deaths is not beyond what is considered to be a crisis. There is a threshold that is used to give guidance on the rates. And what the experts have said is that we are well within that threshold, as depicted here in the tables that are provided.
Mr. Hales.
Minister,
Sir.
you have indicated... The microphone is on. Minister, you have indicated in terms of this sepsis. Are you hearing me? You have indicated causality to the numbers that have been exposed in the sepsis. That's an intimation is by the technical experts. Have they suggested a mechanism or a system of protocols that will now decrease? Since we are aware of the causality, what about decrease in the mortality rate? How are the technical experts advising you in terms of the direction which we are going to go?
But I refer the member to the answers to the question, because it does outline some recommendations which the experts are pursuing.
Minister, I am not, unfortunately I don't have the answers in front of me, but another question I would like to ask. You mentioned something about the stillbirths, and you said there were 62 between May and September, and that you intimated that a number, if I heard correctly, that there were a number of them where the mothers came in, and that you were able to establish that they came in with stillbirths, that is death intra-utero, prior to coming to hospital. Could you advise us as to what percentage of those stillbirths the mothers came in with death intra-utero before coming to hospital? How many died in hospital? And were you able to investigate to determine what was the main causes of these deaths as they come in, which is going to be critical in decreasing our mortality rate?
Ask the member to table those questions, because clearly I would not have those responses at this point in time, and I'd be happy to provide him with that detail. What I will say, use this medium to say, and it's something that I think we all should take note as colleagues here guiding public policy. Between 20, I am told, to 30% of deliveries at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital, which, as you know, is the primary institution for deliveries, between 600 and 800 births per month. Between 20 to 30% of those mothers turn up to the hospital and indeed seek medical attention surrounding their pregnancy and delivery for the first time when they come to deliver. and therefore the possibility of having complications of one form or another is highly likely, and therefore just by that, through that piece of information, I think it's understandable why we have this. What we need to do from a public policy standpoint is to encourage our mothers and expectant mothers to seek appropriate attention once they discover that they are pregnant, as should be the case. Many of them, either because they have had a pregnancy and a delivery before, so they think they appreciate what needs to be done, or for whatever other reason, don't go to the hospital until they are ready to give birth. And it does increase the risk to that mother. And
but Minister, are you saying that we should, by just public awareness, encourage mothers to, as early as possible, to come to hospital? Because the practice has told us that not many come in at 8 or 10 weeks, which is what is prescribed and accepted. Is the government going to establish some kind of protocol? Whereas, given the fact that we have a workforce, a health promotion team, who can go out once there is any indication that there's a pregnancy, and at some stage of the game, we can intervene in terms of going out in the same way the health care workers go out for other chronic diseases, go out and interface with these persons, and then establish that connection so we can, as quickly as possible, intervene in the antenatal care.
Mr. Speaker, the member knows that as a medical practitioner yourself, that there is a mechanism to treat with those cases once a woman is discovered to be expecting. The public health system does provide, through the primary health care system, the clinics, the support, and in some instances even visitation to encourage that. Can we do more? I think we will have to do more, because that statistic, the 20 to 30%, is way, I mean, it should not be. There are a few things that we are looking at, and I will elaborate more on that later on, to try and motivate or incentivize these women to actually seek help on a consistent basis leading up to the delivery of their child.
Mr. Campbell.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm not too comfortable with some of the information that I'm seeing here, because it's not quite clear to me. The first thing is that the answer to question 1 says that there were 5 cases of babies that died due to sepsis, and it says that there were 11 cases that were presumed to have been sepsis. If you then look at the table and you look at the number for Victoria Jubilee Hospital, it says 10. I don't know what combination of 5 and 11 gives you 10, but it says 10. And so some clarity is needed as to how it got to 10, based on what it said in the answer to question 1. And further to that, the minister just said that he has just been informed by his team that the 11 cases that were tested came back negative. If he looks at his answer to question 6 as to what are the appropriate steps when a neonate is admitted to the nursery, and he went through the blood culture, urine culture, cerebrospinal fluid culture, and CBC, it would suggest that if it was presumed that sepsis was on board, that these tests should have been done. And he's now reporting, after tabling the answers, that the tests were done and they were negative. I would like to know what tests were done. Is he reporting on an autopsy, or is he reporting on tests that's done on an infant that is sick and in a nursery? Because that is not clear to me at all.
Mr. Speaker, the member has a distinct advantage over me because I am not trained in medical science. I think the best fallback is to say to him that I will get the details if he's not comfortable. I am reporting I am reporting on the questions that were asked. What I'll say though, on the 10 versus 5, the Victoria Jubilee, I did ask that question because it's common sense to ask that question, having gone through them. And there is a time difference. I'm told that there is a May to September in the calculation of the Victoria Jubilee in the chart versus May to the 20th of October 2016. But I can clarify. That's what I was told by the technocrats who are seated here. So I can further clarify if you want. On the second question, as to when it was done, autopsy or in hospital and so on, I'll be happy to get that information, but I really don't have that information here and now, member.
Mr. Speaker, based on the answer, it would suggest that between the end of September and the 20th of October, you had 5 deaths, based on what he's reported, because he's saying the difference is accounted in the time difference, right? And the fact is that one period ends at the end of September, which is 5, and he's saying by the 20th of October is 10. So is he saying that in the 20 days in the first part of October, we had 5 infants that died, neonates that died at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital because of sepsis? Is that what he's saying?
Mr. Campbell, could you give the minister a few minutes? He seemed to be checking to make sure that he has correct answers. And may I at this time ask members to ask questions relevant to the presentation of the minister. I'm going to ask members to then turn to the standing orders and see what questions we are going, if we are going to do it that way. If you have, members, if you have 4 questions, ask them so that the minister can ask. And Mr. Campbell, have a seat, please. I am not saying that if a minister is answering a question and something arises that you should not proceed. I'm not saying that. But when you have 4 questions, give it to him so that he can answer. And unless something arises from that, then, you know, give us a... But don't give us a critique.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, your comment may have some validity other times, but the question from the member from Northwest St. Anne are very directly related to the presentation made by the minister, and I had intended to ask because the numbers didn't add up. So that relevant
Mr. Davis,
comment. Yes.
I am not criticizing the question from Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
I'm simply saying,
yes,
if you have a number of questions,
yes,
when you stand, put them to the minister so that when he gets up, he will answer them. Don't get up 4 different times.
Yes.
So the relevance of your question to anything that he says will be accepted by
But you also said the question must be relevant to the presentation, and this one was very so relevant.
Minister Tufton. There's a question from Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.